So here's our third wave. Our third wave is called the power of consumption. This is one of the most dramatic things that we have experienced in the last 10 years, is a shift from the old industrial model that we've been working with for the last 100 years. Because the industrial model was not one we had for our entire history. It only happened in the last 100 years, and it was this whole concept of the power of production. So the power of production, if you go back and read Adam Smith and the basis of economics, where he has a book called The Wealth of Nations, and it's about how nations can control entire economies. Power of production is based on economy. It's economics, and the idea of an economy is about lack. Think about that for a moment. Lack, because to economize is to have less. To economize. So lack is about the management of scarce resources. So the concept was a nation would have scarce resources, so it needs to have an economy where it controls the power of production, and by doing that, it's going to be able to control supply and demand and pricing. And so because there's only a limited amount of everything, right? The rules have totally changed, but this is where you things started with. So how's it changed? Because this is all based on the idea of control, which is if we can control this, it's a little bit like saying all flow comes from somewhere. It tends to come from the source of the river. Let's control the source of the river. And there'll be people out here saying, I'm thirsty, I want some water. And these people out here who are doing this, we're going, great. What we'll do is we'll control the flow here, and then we'll create channels. So we'll create a distribution channel. We'll create a media channel. We'll create channels that are coming to you where we'll charge for that channel or we'll advertise in that channel. And as long as we control these channels, we're all good. And as long as we actually shore these up with banks, and we have the banks that are controlling this, then we're all going to be fine because we're going to make money from all of this flow that's coming your way. That all works fine, provided these people remain thirsty, and the only way for them to access all this good stuff is by having a channel. So what happens when it starts to rain? Which is exactly what's happened. We can now get all that value and all that information directly without having to go through anyone's channel. So now that happens, you suddenly have the media channels, you suddenly have the distribution panels, we suddenly have the governments out of the world saying, oh my goodness, they don't actually need to come through us for all this good stuff anymore. So what do we do? And the answer is not try and just hold on to this, even though the dying institutions are still doing that, the horses are still doing that, whereas the cars are out here saying we need a whole new type of business. A whole new type of business is not trying to create a river and controlling it. A whole new kind of business is attracting all the raindrops to us. So this is the difference of control and conquer compared to enhance and attract, where you are actually someone who has a realm of influence now with people who actually are showing up because they want to, not because you've controlled them to be there. And the one thing that we now have the luxury of doing is actually walking away from anyone who tries to hold on to our business by making it difficult for us to leave. Isn't that true? We're like, hey, we don't want that. Well, if you're going to be like that, we'll go somewhere else then. So it's very important for us to see it's a very, very different type of business now that the new businesses are showing up with. And where it's different is it's very clear it's not about the power of production. It's about the power of consumption. I've given the example up there of Groupons, which is one of the first to really show this with daily deal sites, where basically we say, hey, look at that. If we all get together, we can get a super duper deal that we couldn't get on our own. Technology allows us to collaborate now and actually call the shots and say, here's how much we're willing to pay. And so as a result of that, the consumer takes over. And anyone who's trying to set their own price without listening to the consumer, they're going to lose. And anyone who actually goes to their customers and saying, hey, I'm thinking of doing this in this way. Would you be interested at this price? No, what about this price? Are the ones who win every time. Because they're collaborating with the customer, and the customer's saying, I'm being listened to, and I'm willing to pay this much, so work with me on this way. So if you're not speaking to your customers about that, and especially having a core group of customers that you work with who are actually the ones leading the way for you, you're always going to be losing the market, scratching your head, wondering where they went. This, by the way, is not an economy. This is based on something called an ecology. An ecology is the opposite of lack, it's abundance. You know, when I go to a place like Africa and I go to the safari and I see the lions in the wild, it's very obvious that Darwinian theory, in the way it's been associated here in the industrial age, which is survival of the fittest and competition, is absolutely not what happens in Africa. Because the lions don't go around eating everyone saying we're the biggest here. They actually eat what they need, but they actually ensure the ecology remains as well. So it's not about survival of the fittest, it's about survival of the fittest within the preservation of the ecology. And too many of us have forgotten that in the way we're trying to beat all our competition, as opposed to collaborate with everyone within it and not trying to take market share, but have a shared market. And that's not about control, it's about a word called attraction. So we've got a very, very different way that the new types of companies are beating the old, the way the boats and the ships are sailing off to where they want to go to while the big buildings and houses are sinking in the sea. And understanding that shift allows us to say, hey, we've got to actually change our focus from saying my product is valuable to saying my customers are valuable. And if my customers are valuable, maybe they want products that even I don't have, But hey, you know what? I can represent anyone's products anywhere in the world now. So let me go get the best products in the world and deliver them to my customers if that's what they want, and still make money from that. By the way, I've made the example of daily deals, but I want to kind of give a bit of a disclaimer here. Daily deals have had their big wave, but I want to make a really big distinction between a sustainable wave, which is one that can continue to grow, and an unsustainable wave, which is going to collapse. And the reason I'm going to say daily deals generally going to collapse is the same way that Yellow Pages collapsed. You know, so like Yellow Pages became huge, and then all those businesses became worth nothing. TV guides collapsed. They were biggest selling back in the 1990s, biggest selling magazines were the TV guides. No one buys them anymore. So it's like, well, what happened to all these big things that grew and then collapsed? And the answer really lies in this whole concept of cost and value. Because if you have got a wave which is sustainable, you could say a sustainable wave is one in which, number one, is growing. So you go, hey, look at that, everyone's jumping on it. But the second one is as it grows, the cost of production goes down, right? It goes down. And what we mean by going down is like, for example, if you take something like solar power, every single year the cost of power, production of solar power halves. And so you can see, wow, this wave is going to keep growing, and it's going to eventually be even more competitive than the grid. But if you take something like the daily deal sites, I mean, we have a resort in Bali where we have a beautiful resort, and we have it on daily deal sites here in Australia. And when we first started, people were willing to pay $500 to come for 5 days. Today, they want it for $300 because price will always come down when a wave grows. But while the price is coming down, the cost of us actually delivering that day hasn't gone down. It's still that high. So as a result, we then have to compete with people who are trying to do it for less and less and less, until eventually what happens with daily deal sites is everyone does it for loss. They just want the business. And so they all do it for a loss, and it's already happening in America, where it's simply not sustainable, and eventually the market drives the whole thing into oblivion. And so that's what we're going to see in daily deal sites. It doesn't mean that those daily deal sites won't reform themselves in some other way. They already have in a way, in the way that customers are now using them differently. So for example, here is where we can actually now collaborate without even going through a middleman like a Groupon's. Here is an example of homes, Airbnb. So Airbnb, A-I-R-B-N-B, as in air, bed and breakfast, is the idea of putting up your room or your house on a site where you have a trust base because you've got a membership and you're not anonymous, you're a real person, where you can say, hey, I've got a place in Perth right now. If you're coming to Perth, it's going to cost you this much to stay here. You do all the payments and all the organizing through the site. So basically, you've got trust base on there. And you say, I'm going to New York, so I want to have a condo in New York, and I want to pay $100 a night. And you'll find one that's on here. You can immediately go to it. It's cheaper than going to a hotel. And you're part of a trusted base, 19,000 cities, 192 countries, where effectively you can have some 200,000-300,000 homes around the world that you can already call yours, because you can go to any one of them at any time. So the need to have to buy properties and hold on to properties have disappeared, because we can be anywhere at any time when we're connecting to other people through the power of consumption. Another great example, I love this little image here. Sometimes you just need a car. So he's been thrown out of his house, and he's like, where do I go next? And Zipcar is a great example. Now, is Zipcar big in Australia yet? Not yet. But someone here in Australia will pick this up in the same way that the brothers who set up Scoopon simply copied the Groupon's thing and then went out and made $80 million from it. You can pick up this concept, do it here in Perth, and by being on the beginning of that wave, have $1 million business in Western Australia. And there's many concepts like that. It's just a matter of who does it. But Zipcar basically works on the basis that everyone throws their car in. They say, right, my car is there for hire. I only use it 4% of the time. The rest of the time it's driving around. Use it if you want to. You get the little component that goes in there, so other people with Zipcars can open your car if they basically pay the money. You get the money into your account. You can basically look at your GPS and say, hey, there's a car around the corner. I'll take that car, and I'm going to drive to where I need to go to. So everyone's sharing their cars with each other. And as a result of that, it's far, far easier and cheaper to move around than using taxis. And obviously, it means you're actually earning money from your car when you're not in it. So there's these great examples like this that are out there. Now, this is where we're using commerce in everything to share. But how does this idea of power of consumption work when we actually look at even our reputation? I just want to share this with you, because this is like a major shift that's taken place. Here is Virgin on Twitter. Virgin has 34,000 followers on Twitter. So I could look at Virgin and go, hey, look at that. Virgin doesn't even have as many followers as me. How great is that? But then I'd be totally wrong, because the reason they've only got 34,000 is not because more people aren't interested. It's because this man here, called Richard Branson, has 1.8 million followers. So what's going on here? Why is it everyone's more interested in following Richard Branson than his company? It's because one of the biggest things that happens through power of consumption is the sharing of trust. People trust people more than they trust companies. Which means if at the moment you're trying to build your company through the company brand instead of your personal brand, you've just missed the massive opportunity there. Because people are much more likely to use your business if they connect to you than they are if they try and connect to some faceless brand in the business. So one of the biggest things you're seeing in every multinational is they are now branding certain people within the multinational, and that's more important to them than building the brand of the multinational. And in your own business, there was a time a couple of years ago when most people would say building your brand of your business is important and your personal brand secondary. That's all shifted around now because everyone's following the individuals. And if you want to go out there, I had great examples from some people that just made best-selling books. And they said, don't go out there trying to get on the New York Times bestselling list and trying to get onto CNN and those media companies because no one trusts them anyway. Get in front of 5 or 10 influence makers that have personal blogs that people follow for them personally and get them to say good words about your books, and you'll sell far more through personalities and individuals that have got that trust base than you will through big media companies. So there's been this huge shift that's taken place where it's not just the loss of the value of the media companies in being able to have that influence, the influence that any one of us in this room could have grows as well. It doesn't mean you have to be the one that's the one promoting your company. You may have someone else in your company that actually you can build into a brand. It could be that you associate with other people here in Australia or around the world who can associate with your brand. But that connection and that endorsement that comes from that individual is far, far, far greater than anything you can get from newspaper advertising or trying to go out there through big media. So I just want to share that because personal branding now is more important than ever. And these are the 3 things I wanted to share. End of power production. This one here, power production, comes from economies of scale, which means the more I can hold onto the river, the more money I can make. Economies of scale are over. No point being big. You can be profitable and quite small because it's not about economies of scale. It's about economies of speed. It's how much you can shift as the waves change or as the wind changes, and your ability to do that so that when your customer wants something new next month, you can deliver it straight on the spot. You've empowered your team to say, hey, if they don't want that price point, then reorganize it to do something that they do want, ask them what they're looking for, deliver on that, and we're always going to be able to make money and deliver value that way, and we can't if we keep on trying to get them to match what we thought yesterday was what they wanted. So this shift here in terms of economies of speed changes everything, and as I said, personal brand against corporate, absolutely key as well. So on this third wave here, if you say, well, does this also go the reverse? Does this go to the point where not just is our power of consumption as a buyer in the market shift, but our power of consumption as an entrepreneur also shifts? That as an entrepreneur, we have more ability to consume good stuff out there than ever, and anything that we thought was a block is no longer a block. Take something like financing. Take something like finding great people. It's like, well, that's the tough part. I haven't got good people. I haven't got the money. So there's, for example, a company called Kickstarter. I'm going to give you an example here of a guy who basically was in an industry which traditionally is changing because in order for you to do a video game, you had to go out and get a lot of funding from someone somewhere. And the big video games are like hundreds of millions of dollars now. So he wanted to do a video game, but he wasn't wanting to go out there to do that. So what he did instead was he went to a company called Kickstarter. And Kickstarter allows individuals to all put in like $10 or $100 to say, I'm your fan, I want you to produce that video game. I'm happy to give you the $10 if it helps you to produce it, but give me something in return. So what they'll do is they'll say, right, for $10 you get a little signed piece from us and one of the video games. For $5,000 we'll put you a character in the video game. You actually get them all involved within it, and so the goal is that you'll be able to actually raise the money from your market as opposed to sitting around saying, I can't get started because no one wants to fund me. So here is a video that this guy put together, and this happened at the beginning of February. And he wanted to raise $400,000. And I watched what happened from February when he did this all the way through to the amount of money he actually earned based on this video. And I'll show you how much he earned after I show the video. But every one of us in this room has the ability to do something similar like this, where suddenly $1 million question is easy to answer because there's already millions of dollars out there. So here is a video from Double Fine around how to raise money for a video game.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you there. You caught me indulging in one of my many impressive hobbies. I'm Tim Schafer, and I'm a man of many passions. Drumming, skydiving, like charity or something. But one of the things I'm most passionate about is making games. And one of my favorite types of games to make is adventure games. But these days it seems like adventure games are almost a bit of a lost art form. They exist in our dreams and our memories and in Germany. People come up to me all the time and they say,
You should make a point-and-click graphic adventure.
you know, I would, except,
Adventure games are not dead!
okay, I'm on your side, but if I were to go to a publisher right now and pitch an adventure game, they'd laugh in my face.
But I have money and I'd buy a copy.
Well, that's nice, but unfortunately, it's not enough money to make a game.
But there's a ton of people out there just like me. They'd buy one too.
I wonder if that's true.
Dude, it's totally true. There's so many people
I'm talking
who
to
buy
you.
it.
What if there are a lot of adventure game fans out there who want an adventure game? I wonder if there's some way that I could talk to them directly and cut out publishers altogether. And that's when it occurred to me, Kickstarter. We can use Kickstarter to make a fan-funded old-school adventure game. It's perfect. We got the perfect team here at Double Fine to make it. We got the inventor of the genre here, Ron Gilbert. Oh, look, there he is right now. Maybe he'll help us. He'll help us. But that's only half the story. We'll also be filming the whole thing as we go. Well, I mean, these guys will be here. This is,
Paul,
one of the guys from,
Two-Player Productions?
the people making that documentary about nachos?
Notch.
Whatever.
TwoPlayerProductions.com.
These talented documenteers will be filming the whole process from beginning to end and putting it up on the internet as we go. A high-quality, serialized documentary that provides an unprecedented look into what really happens when a company like Double Fine makes a game. You know how they say you don't want to see how sausage gets made? We are going to show you how the sausage gets made. We are going to take our sausage and shove it in your face, warts and all. Whether it goes well or whether it all goes to hell, we're going to show everything. Isn't that exciting? But the conversation won't just be a one-way street. This is a game for adventure fans, funded by adventure fans, so we want to make it with adventure fans. You'll be able to talk back to us on the exclusive online community of people who funded the game. You'll give input on the concept art, the music, and your input will actually affect the direction the game takes. It'll be like a collaboration. Or more like Little Orphan Annie, where we're the cute little red-haired girl who sings and tap dances for your pleasure, and you're like Daddy Warbucks, who's like bald or something, but he's cool and everybody likes him. And that's the point. If you back this Kickstarter project, you will be cool and everybody will like you, guaranteed. So, we are asking for this much to make the game, and this much to film it. And that may seem like a lot of money, but it's really not that much for a game budget these days. It's pretty small, actually, but we're not scared. It's going to be an adventure, both the process and the product. We could possibly go, oh man, come on. I hate these. There it is. Okay, great. So, what's going to happen? No one can say for sure, but here's my promise to you. Either the game will be great, or it'll be a spectacular failure, caught on camera for everyone to see. Either way, you win. What could possibly go wrong?
So he put that video together at the beginning of February, and normally you give yourself like a month, which meant the actual close date time on that happened during this tour. So it happened just at the beginning of this last week, and he wanted to raise $400,000, and here is how much he raised. 3.3 million from 87,000 backers. And you can see, like here, look, page 15. You're not getting shares in the game. You're getting $15, you get a finished game, awesome glory, blah, blah, you get part of the community. That's it. So it's not actually, he's actually a forward order. He's actually got $3 million worth of forward orders, and that basically allows him now to go out there, build more, and it's not like he's returning the money. He's saying, okay, I'll take the whole money and we'll just make a better game. And everyone's going, great. So what's so interesting about this is that if you're still at a point where you're thinking, I have a great idea, but I don't have the money, I don't have the talent, I don't have the time. You don't need any of those things. They're all illusions because it's all out there already. Friction has disappeared, and all of that already is just waiting to come your way. If you're there thinking, oh yeah, but you know, in Australia, you know, there's nothing like Kickstarter. There is. This started up. This is Possible. So you can go to Possible now, and this is the Australian version where some guys in Sydney just got together about a year ago and said, hey, let's just copy Kickstarter, which is exactly what they're doing. And they're getting success in it. And if you happen in Perth to want to set up something similar, then I'm sure that you could set it up and also have $1 million business within the next 5 years, because there's going to be many of these types of sites that are going to start creating. And in the same way that when Groupon started, those who actually copied it all became multi-millionaires. Those who are copying this kind of concept will also do the same. So opportunities are everywhere. And what we're doing is going upriver and seeing what's currently happening that we could be part of if we simply choose to.